மெசேஜ் அனுப்பிச்சிட்டாப்பா. அவரு எப்ப பேசுறாங்கன்னு தெரியல, இன்னும் பார்க்கலாம் அவங்க. அத வரட்டும், அவங்க இன்னும் ஆன்லைன்ல இல்ல அவங்க.
மாலா
சொல்லுங்க மதன்.
இருக்கேன், வந்துட்டு நான் பார்த்துட்டு தான் இருக்கேன். சரி.
Hi, Karthik, can we start the program? Hello. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah.
संडे को तो इतने होते हैं और परेशान हो जाती हूँ.
Selva, you are ready? Arvinda is there?
सारे संडे को रख देते हैं. मेरा फ्रेंड है.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. Okay, fine. So let us start the program. Dr. Fatima, can you start the program?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Fatima, can we start the program?
Let's check presenting.
Can you hear me, sir? Good evening, and all present here. We welcome you all for this CD program organized by Department of Prosthodontics, Sri Ramachandra University on World Geriatric Day. As you all know, United Nations have declared World Geriatric Day on October 1st, and the number of geriatric individuals are increasing day by day, and they declare that in another 3 decades, the population will double and it will be 1.5 billion peoples. So we need care and support for these individuals, and it's not anybody. It's we prosthodontists who has to care for rehabilitation of them, and preventive and rehabilitative therapy should be managed. So on this pretext, we are entering in this program. I request Dr. Madan Kumar sir to introduce the speaker.
Yeah, good evening all. I take the pleasure of introducing the keynote speakers, Dr. Arvinda Meera Kuntapalli and Dr. Selva Mani today. They'll be presenting a paper on prevalence correlates and health-related implication of edentulation among elderly in India. Dr. Arvinda was my teacher in University of Southampton in United Kingdom, and then she did her undergraduate and postgraduate in India, and then moved to the University of Tübingen in Germany to complete her PhD in 2007 in economics. And then in 2013, she completed her PG in certificate in University of Southampton, UK. And then currently she's working as a senior lecturer in global health and postgraduate research coordinator in the University of Aberdeen, UK. She had many honors on her name. To name a few, she have many research fundings, and then I think in 2012 she received a 270,000 Great Britain pounds for doing a research in different aging. And then she could also receive a lot of travel grants in her name. So she is a well-known researcher around the world in social sciences. And Mr. Selvamani is another. He's a second speaker today. So he completed his undergraduate and post-graduation in Tamil Nadu, and then completed his PhD in population studies from the International Institute of Population and Science, Mumbai. He had received a Young Scientist Summer Program from International Institute of Applied System Analysis from Austria, and currently is working as a project officer in conducting longitudinal aging studies in India in the same institute, International Institute of Population and Science, Mumbai. So I welcome you both for this program, and then we are eagerly waiting for your for a presentation to enlighten our knowledge on edentialism in India. Thank you so much, and then it's over to you, Arvinda and Selvamani.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Madan.
Thank you.
So I'll start presenting my screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, please.
Let me know if you can see the screen.
Okay.
Is the screen visible now?
Yeah, the screen is visible. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks for this opportunity, and it's nice to meet Madan. I forgot how many years ago I met, and he reminded me it was 6 years. So nice to have this opportunity to engage with several people here who are experts in edentalism and dentistry. So me and Selva, we are both social scientists. We just want to say that if you ask us any specific question related to dental health, we would just put the question back to you, because both of us work on health inequalities. That's our research expertise. So my undergrad has been in genetics, medicinal zoology, and chemistry, but then I did my master's in anthropology and demography because my passion was always to understand health inequalities. So my research focuses on inequalities in later life and also nutritional inequalities, in addition to NCDs with a special focus on cancer in India. So at the moment, Selva and I were looking into some of the gaps among older people literature on inequalities, and we saw that edentalism was one of the major aspects where there are gaps from national level kind of evidence. So that's when we started looking into the literature and started analyzing the data. So I'll say a little bit more about our paper. Selva, do you want to add anything to that on how the paper generated?
Yeah, this paper mainly started with the knowledge gap of edentalism. We have a lot of research on other health indicators for other non-communicable diseases, etc. But the very few research on oral health or particularly edentalism. So, and the implications, like how this oral health is affecting the other health outcomes. For example, general health or mental health outcomes, depression or psychological distress is very less. So I think in this background, we started this paper. And the results are also convincing that oral health or the edentalism is strongly associated. So in that way, we are happy to present this some of the results and some background about the oral health. Yes.
Yeah. And Selva's work is also on health inequalities and with a special focus on aging. So he's one of the upcoming scholars working on aging demography in India. So if you need to look at some of the health inequalities work or big surveys carrying out in India at the moment, he is the person to speak to. Because we are talking about World Geriatric Day, it's really important to start talking about some of the really good things we achieved in the millennium. So at the start of the millennium, we had centenarian numbers shooting really unprecedented numbers. For example, we had one of the oldest centenarian in the world who died just before the start of millennium, 1997, at the age of 122 years. Jean Calment lived almost on her own till 110. She was cycling independently till 100 years, and she was smoking as well. Many people think aging is kind of, in a specific linear fashion that people will have healthy habits, but she was, always smoking on her birthday parties as well. And there were lots of interesting kind of genetic experiments to various other studies on her to understand longevity. But then now it becomes really common that we have lots of centenarians in the world. So if you look at 1950, we had almost like 33,899 centenarians who are 100 or older. And right now we have nearly more than 500,000 older people living 100 years or older. So to give you a context, in the UK, initially 100 years was a big thing. The Queen would sign personally a card congratulating people at the age of 100. If you have more than 20,000 people becoming, so it becomes a massive task. So you have to then start electronic signature or sending different ways because it's no longer feasible. So at the moment we have had, really good improvement in life expectancy up until COVID, because we are yet to see how COVID is impacting some of these numbers in 2020 and in 2021 as well. So when we look at the inequalities in life expectancy, which I believe is really important also for dental health studies globally as well, is that we haven't seen very high inequalities. The life expectancy was moving between 22 and 41 at 1800. So even at the top before, like now we have Scandinavian countries going up here. I think this is India with lower life expectancy. And you can see here in 1900, the inequalities start widening, where a lot of European countries went to the top. Japan was the only country that had relatively high life expectancy from Asian countries, but otherwise the inequalities kept increasing. So you can see the gap was between almost 55 and 25. So you had a lot of gap. But then by 2000 again, some countries made a massive improvement in life expectancy, crossed 80 and 75, whereas several countries continue to have life expectancy at 40s, life expectancy at birth. So what does it mean for also dental health and oral health? So we know that it's really an important indicator in terms of oral health, also predicts to a certain level life expectancy, and also countries with good health system tend to have better life expectancy. So oral health is also part of the package as well. So it's really important to remember that life expectancy and oral health are also having an association. So currently moving on to 2020, life expectancy at birth still has very high inequalities. You can see that it's the highest in North American countries, Europe, Australia, Japan, but otherwise, if we move especially to African countries, you see that it's lighter, it's lower. So the inequalities continue to persist. And where you have lower life expectancy, it is not any surprise that they would also have poor health system or health system where there is out-of-pocket payment. And which also means, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I think your slides are not changing, ma'am. It's still in the title page. Is it so?
Oh, sorry. Let me try again. Let me reshare it. Maybe it got stuck or so.
Yes.
It's in the same slide actually.
Oh, no. Okay, let me re-present. Sometimes it gets stuck. So I'll present again.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. So hopefully this time it will work. Can you see now? Is it better? Is it changing now?
You're not presented your screen, ma'am.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe if you.
Is it changing?
Yeah,
Yes,
now
yes,
it's
I think you can present
Okay, so
slideshow.
yeah, that's what I did. So I think it just did not work before. So yeah, so you can see here, this was the picture of Jane Clam I was showing, and this was the graph on centenarians. This is the life expectancy inequalities I was talking about in this slide, where you can see the gap.
Slide is
Aravinda,
not
ma'am.
going.
Yes.
Ma'am, slide
Can
is
you-
not
can you-
changing, ma'am.
Okay, so let me. Okay, so let me do.
Slideshow will be better.
Yeah, I was doing slideshow only. I don't know why it's not.
Okay.
I'll do the entire screen and then say, rather than putting. Okay, so let me try this way. And then hopefully, I was doing slideshow and it was working before.
Okay.
Now, can you see my screen changing, slides changing?
Yeah, now it's changing, I think. Yeah, it's changing.
Okay, and the slides are changing as well.
Changing as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I think there was some technical issue. So this was the image I was showing just to show the oldest centenarian. And this was the graph I was showing about, how the centenarians have increased. And then this was the life expectancy graph I was showing how there were inequalities. So each dot here represents a country or a bubble. So if the bubble is bigger, it means the population is higher. So you see in this case, the inequality is increasing by 2000. So moving to 2020, this is where I was showing that the inequalities in life expectancy are very clear here. For example, in African countries, you can see and also Asian countries have the lowest life expectancy globally. And it's not a surprise because you can see where the health systems are weaker, where there is out-of-pocket payment, you see that those places have lower life expectancy. So again, there would be an association between dental health and also health systems and life expectancy in those. So they're all coming together in these aspects. So again, the simple question is there an association between life expectancy and income, and what does it do with dental health and oral health? We can see here up until 1800, most countries are in kind of, not really having high income inequality, but there was a linear association with richer countries having higher life expectancy. And then that became much stronger by 1900, as you can see, countries moving into, income level 2, for example, here, have the highest life expectancy by 1900. But by the time we move to 2019, you see this wide disparity in life expectancy and also income as well. So again, you could say, while income is not one-to-one associated with dental health in a way, because some countries have insurance system, for example, in the UK, NHS provides free entry at the point of healthcare, but for oral health, it's not the same. And in the US, again, there is a different kind of insurance system. So while income is not directly associated, but you can see that there is an association between income and life expectancy. But with dental health, you have to go one step further to understand the kind of insurance system and health system support that's available. For example, in India, Ayushman Bharat doesn't cover dental health. There is a lot of pressure for the PM Arogya Yojana program to include oral health in it, except for Jharkhand. No other state has included it. So you can see that, for example, you might see higher proportion of people going for oral screening and dental health related, visits and claims in Jharkhand. But it doesn't mean Jharkhand is a rich state, but it's because of the policy environment that in last year, I think 2019 data showed that up to 30% of claims from the state health insurance was from oral health related matters. So that's a really high proportion of it. So again, income has an association, but then we have to remember that policy environment makes all the difference in terms of oral health use in different parts of the country, and also how oral health, the challenges that are within the country as well. So very often we talk about population aging, and we look into population aging as proportion of older people age 65 and above. Very often when we think of population aging, we are thinking about the whole population becoming older. That's not how population aging is measured. You have to think of it in a slightly tricky way, that the base is the whole population, and especially the base at the time of fertility decides. So for example, suddenly fertility falls, so the number of people entering the denominator goes down, you see higher proportion of older people. So population aging is not a straightforward thing because it's not always going to be older. Population aging could also be reversible in a way that fertility decides very often if a population is becoming younger or older. So we normally look at proportion of older people, and this map here will tell you how global aging is and proportions are. The darker ones are those which have higher proportion, sometimes 20% and above. And if we take 60 as a cutoff point, they go 30% and above of population in the older group. So you see North America, European countries, Australia, Japan. So some of the suspects we know normally have the highest kind of increase in aging. And then you see a little bit in South America as well. But then when it comes to Asian and African countries, the proportion of older people is very low. So that could also mean that we might have less oral health problems, and that's not the case, because very often, as we know, it's a life course perspective. If people do not have good oral health from early on life, the problems start picking up very early, even at the age of 30s or 40s. Edentism could happen depending on the situation they are in. And also for countries like India, it's really important to remember the number of older people, because while the proportion might show that India is not really in this higher level of demographic transition with a huge proportion of older people, it's really important to understand that according to for example, 2011 census showed that we have more than 100 million older people. So 100 million older people, you can look at it in any which way possible. You can look at it as a market for the oral health market. You can think of it as health inequalities. You can look at it from the perspective of health and health infrastructure that's available. So all these different things really matter when we look at number of older people. So the proportion might not look really big, but then out of 702 million older people in 2019, you can see that majority of them are located in Asian countries. So Central and Southern Asia, 119 million. And then you also have Eastern and South Asia, 260 million. And then Europe and North America have 200 million only. So the absolute number is where we see that we are going to, have major problems even in the future going forward. We can see that Southern Asia, Eastern Asia, Southeast Asia will have more than 800 million older people. So 900 million will be there by 2050 if the projection continues in the way and COVID doesn't impact these projections. So the inequalities in healthcare system will get worse if we don't have policies and we don't look into the oral health use in India at the moment. But then what kind of data do we have? So it's really important to understand when we talk about health system in India, health aspects in India. Does India have a very strong database that we can use to study inequalities? I'll start with a simple question. You can ask me how many older people are there in India, and then I'll say, I'm really sorry, the answer lies in 2011 census report or medium variant forecasts of 2011 census report. So we are living in 2020 and we live on 2011 census data to know how many older people are there currently in India. So put differently, with the COVID impact, when we know that older people are at higher risk, we are not even able to say where and how and exactly, what kind of, living arrangements are there. So again, coming to the next question, how do they live? If older people are there between 100 and 120 million based on forecast, where do they live? What kind of living arrangements they have? Again, we have to go back to 2011 census data. And what 2011 census data provides is it tells you how many households have one older person. For example, if a household has only one person, 48% of them have older people only 60 and above. That's the kind of information we get. We don't really get the kind of relationships. Is it a joint family? Is it a family of two older people living together? What kind of support system they have? We don't have those huge data sets to understand any kind of inequalities. Again, we have to rely on survey data, which shows that 80% of adults 60 and over live with wider family and 20% live with spouse or on their own. So it translates to 20 million older adults totally living on their own or with their spouse. And again, if we look at within those households where single women households, very likely what you will see is they have poor education, no pension coverage. So which would mean that their healthcare use will not be very strong and oral health will be at the bottom of the healthcare use. So all these different things have to be taken into consideration when we are looking into health system and inequalities in India. So coming to oral health and why is it relevant? Why should we really focus on it in terms of health inequalities as well? We know that poor oral health conditions in old age are important predictors of several health-related outcomes, including nutrition and NCDs. Increasing literature shows that poor oral health could also result in non-communicable diseases, and there could be a kind of complex relation between those two factors. And we know for sure that, when there is edentism or other kind of oral health challenges, intake of food is directly impacted, which directly impacts nutritional status. And in the complex phase of nutritional transition in India. So you have to imagine that nutritional transition is happening where more and more people are consuming unhealthy diets and obesity is increasing. But if you really look at a proportion of obesity and overweight by age, you see that older people have the highest proportion of underweight in India compared to younger people. So it is the middle age that kind of has more overweight proportion and obese proportion. So if we look at undernutritional challenges, older people is one of the big groups that have these undernutrition challenges. And we know in India, dentures could be really expensive. If people have really challenges eating some of their food that's provided at home, then they just, reduce their eating and they have difficulties with their nutritional intake, which directly impacts their body mass index and other nutrition. And also we know that globally oral health is a significant contributor of disease burden, disability, and also poor life expectancy as well. But then given that we have all this overwhelming evidence, we assume that everyone will be looking at it as a big global health or public health problem, and we don't. Oral health is a neglected public health issue, particularly in low and middle income countries where access to oral health care and oral health awareness is relatively lower. So very often if we go to rural settings, either in India or other low middle income countries, it's difficult to find a doctor, let alone finding, specialist, dental health specialist or a specialist who can do, denture fixing. So someone has to go to a different place and they need to know where to go, and they need to have oral health awareness as well to be able to plan. They need to have money also because most of it is out of pocket expenditure. As I said, in the national insurance, except for Jharkhand, most of the states don't include oral health in the claims for below poverty level. So what are the consequences of poor dental health? Poor dental health can result in edentism, which is the state of losing natural teeth, which is an irreversible condition. So once we lose teeth, it's irreversible. But what we can do is if we have resources and possibilities, we can have, dentures and other kind of ways to cope with it. And also edentism was used as an indicator of early aging because it's shown to be associated with decreased longevity in few studies. So it kind of is used as a gold standard marker to evaluate oral health status. Again, it's a kind of complex thing. As I said, it depends on the life course perspective. If someone has poor hygiene or different kind of deficiencies early on, they are likely to have higher risk. So it's not only directly dental association, it's accumulation of health inequalities starting early on in their life that expresses later in life very early that it impacts their early aging indicators and also their life expectancy. Salva and I looked at extensive literature, and we found that the previous studies have observed the association of complete edentism and missing teeth count with mortality, disability, compromised diet quality and nutritional status, and poor quality of life. All these aspects have been studied extensively in various parts of the world, particularly in high-income countries. And again, recent studies also showed that the cumulative global burden of oral conditions increased a lot because of not lack of treatment of oral conditions, and the global burden increased from 2.5 billion to 3.5 billion between 1990 and 2015, and part of this has to also do with increasing aging, the proportion and also absolute number that I have discussed before. So that directly contributes also to the cumulative burden of oral conditions. And edentism is among the top 30 causes of years lived with disability globally. And in some countries, including some high-income countries, it was noted as one of the top 10 causes of YLD. So years lived with disability in some countries, edentism is in top 10. So that shows the significance and importance of it. So what do we see in terms of inequalities in global edentism? We see very strongly in the literature intra-country and inter-country variations in the prevalence of edentism and inequalities by socioeconomic status. So we cannot say that, for example, in the UK, everywhere you have this proportion of edentism. What we have to see is by socioeconomic status, by geographical inequalities, and also, for example, Scotland has a different kind of dental health system compared to England. So we have to look within the country, the inequalities. Similarly, like in India, as I said, Jharkhand has really high number of people going for dental health checkup. It doesn't mean Jharkhand is performing well for oral health. It's because they have the possibility for people below poverty line to be able to use oral health hospitals. They are listed 62 or 58 hospitals that they can visit. So that means that people are using more, which also means that you see the higher number of people in edentism category as well. So we also looked at some of the literature in terms of demographic and epidemiological transition. We see that the variations and the inequalities in edentism is also related to stages of demographic and epidemiological transition. For example, the proportion of older people through demographic transition, and also with the epidemiological transition, we can see that those with higher level of NCDs will have a different kind of behavior compared to those at the start of the epidemiological transition. So we have identified different patterns going, and it's really important to understand those aspects as well, because it's really complex. It's not very linear and straightforward to understand it. So you need to look at individual factors, you need to look at the policy factors, and also other macro level and life course perspective factors to understand the health inequalities. Most high-income countries have experienced a decreasing proportion of edentlessness because of improvement in oral health, and also oral health awareness and replacement of missing teeth with dentures. For example, in Germany, 89% of older people aged 65 and 74 replace their missing teeth. So when we move to low and middle income countries, very often we don't have that health awareness, and also a replacement of missing teeth with dentures is not taken as a serious priority as well, either because of socioeconomic status or because of lack of facilities. We'll touch a little bit, Selva will talk a little bit on that when presenting the results from our own analysis on utilization of edentism services. So what evidence do we have in India? In India, we know that oral health problems are largely neglected public issues. I think you know it more than us because you work day in and day out on this. Of course, middle class and upper middle class to upper class in India might be using regularly oral health facilities, but then it is a challenge when it comes to rural settings and people with SES that is low, where they can't afford out-of-pocket expenditure. So what we found it really kind of puzzling when we did the literature review for India is that there were inconsistent associations between socioeconomic factors and edentism. When we started the literature review and before the analysis, we thought, it's straightforward. We know that socioeconomic factors play an important role. So there should be some association where people with low SES might have poor oral health. But then, of course, research is always interesting and exciting in a way that it shows us that, it's very complex, and we need to really understand the layers of factors that are responsible for that. For example, the World Health Organization study on global aging and health, it's a SAGE study, which was carried out in different countries, including India. It shows that there was no significant association between socioeconomic status and edentism among older adults 50 or over. However, there were other studies that found a positive association between socioeconomic status and edentism. And again, it's really important to understand the settings as well. For example, national level studies are different compared to state level studies. And then when we move to hospital data, there was a negative association between socioeconomic status and edentism among middle-aged and elderly population. So these were really conflicting kind of findings that we had from literature review we saw from India. I just included 3, but then we have done more studies and they show as well that mixed kind of associations. So that made us really think a little bit more about evidence gaps and then help us design the aim of our study. So when we look deeper into why we had these inconsistencies, we realized that most of the studies focused on regions or different states. For example, you might be organizing or conducting a study in Chennai or in a particular village closer to your city, or in a particular group of people visiting your hospital. So it's a specific set. It's not a national study. It focuses on a particular region and also often small sample size that are not representative in each state. So for example, if you're organizing a study where you work in particular hospitals, you are getting a subset of population, perhaps upper middle class, older people going to have health checkup from those groups. So you will not have even representative population within your state or even region, let alone state. It could be even region as well. And then we realized the other challenge is there are lots of studies on edentulism and inequalities in India, but we didn't see any nationwide studies except some of the SAGE and other new kind of studies that were coming up that looked at complex associations. What we need is not combining different hospital data. We need to understand the scale of issue from different states in India and also from within different socioeconomic settings as well, so that we can understand the scale of the issue. And we didn't see nationwide studies that were able to look into that. And also national studies that do not focus on states with higher proportion of older people. Some studies were there, but then they might focus on, for example, Uttar Pradesh or Delhi, where the proportion of older people might not be the highest. So again, you're not capturing based on the demographic transition levels or epidemiological transition levels. So based on all that literature, so we designed our aim. And one of the aims of our study we are presenting is to look into socioeconomic disparities in edentulism in India using a nationally representative sample of older adults. So to our knowledge, no previous study has examined the association of edentulism with poor self-rated health, chewing disability, psychological or subjective well-being. So that's what we are going to present today, looking into these 4 specific indicators. So where do we get our data? We took the UNFPA's building a knowledge base on population aging in India. And that study particularly focused on aging states. For example, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Odisha, West Bengal, Punjab, and Himachal were included. You can see the sample size. They focused on 9,852 respondents aged 60 years and above, with a special focus on aging states. And we can't say it's fully nationally representative, but it does represent the larger Indian regions, for example, North India, South, East, West. We don't have any from Northeast India, but from larger Indian regions, we are able to capture different regions of India and also important states where aging proportion is higher. So what kind of outcome measures and other factors we looked at? For example, the main focus was edentulism, and respondent was asked a question: has a doctor or nurse ever told you that you have lost all natural teeth? That was the question asked to respondent. So imagine this question was asked in different languages to older people in different settings. So there were like 8 different languages used, English, and in every state, 2 options were provided: local language and also English was provided. And Hindi was also there if they needed. So every state had multiple options provided to fill the form. So respondents saying yes to the question were considered as edentulous in present study. So you have to remember, it's a self-reported edentulism. Nobody asked the respondent to open the mouth and say, can I see if you have lost all the teeth? And also, it's a very tricky question in the way that it doesn't really ask, have they replaced them with the dentures? It just asks the question, has a doctor or nurse ever told you you have lost all natural teeth? And then we looked at the association of edentulism with 4 different indicators, as we said. First was self-rated health, which is measure of general health status of population. And also several studies have shown that it's a strong predictor of mortality. So in the BKPAI survey that we used, self-reported health was measured as a 5-point scale ranging from excellent to poor. So we would be asked a question, can you please rate your health? Either, from excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. So you have the 5-point scale, and then it was dichotomized into poor, who reported poor health, and everyone else was coded as good to understand any inequalities of edentism by self-rated health. And we also looked into chewing disability because there was a specific question asked to the respondents if the respondent reported partial or full level of chewing difficulty. So that is coded as a chewing disability. And in addition to that, there were 2 questions related to mental health and psychological distress. We asked general health, the GHQ-12 questionnaire to measure psychological distress, where these 12 questions were asked. Have you recently been able to concentrate on what you are doing? Have you lost sleep? So it's about looking at, depression, confidence, sleep, and also decision-making and day-to-day activities in life. And all those were combined together, and we created a dichotomous score to understand psychological distress among older people in India. And finally, we looked at subjective well-being, which is called SUBI inventory, which has also different sets of questions related to the feelings and how they feel in terms of the well-being, how they are, managing the situations, and if there is any crisis, how confident they can, handle the crisis, and those kinds of aspects were asked. So again, we looked at the SUBI and we created a dichotomous variable using all these questions combined together. Anyone with a score below 5 was having poor subjective well-being. So we created the subjective well-being score as a dichotomous variable. Of course, we had to look into other factors like socioeconomic status. We looked into years of schooling, household assets based on wealth quintile. We looked at age, marital status, because it's really important to know if they're living alone or living with spouse or wider family. We also looked into rural urban residence and also use of tobacco, the religion, which was coded as Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, and other religions. And of course, we adjusted also state in the model. So I'll now let Selva explain from here the statistical analysis and the results. So, Selva?
Thank you, Aravinda, for providing a detailed background of the study. In this study, we have used 2 set of analysis. First, we wanted to know the distribution, for example, the sample distribution or the prevalence of the certain indicators. We use the bivariate analysis with the chi-square test. And second phase, we wanted to know the adjusted effect or the likelihood of the edentism or how this edentism affecting the other health outcomes. So we use the multivariate logistic regression here. So in the second part, for example, we wanted to know how this edentism is affecting the general health or psychological distress. So here also we use the logistic regression analysis. So and we also use in the regression analysis we use the sample weight, because we have sample of 7 states, and these states are more heterogeneous. So to control for this heterogeneity, so we used sample weight in the regression analysis. Next slide. Okay, if you see this is a sample distribution or the sample characteristics. So in India overall, from the 7 states sample, so the percentage of people reported low subjective well-being is 27%, and around 28% of people are reported, elderly people age 60 and above reported chewing disability. That is quite high. And if you see the prevalence of psychological distress, that is more than around 35%, and the prevalence of poor self-rated health is 18%. And our important variable is edentism, like in India. So 12% of the elderly age 60 and above are they don't have a tooth. So this is the sample distribution. Okay, if you see the this age distribution of the sample, a majority of the sample are in the 60 to 69 age group, and followed by 70 to 79. And in this PKP survey, the sample of women, women of age 60 and above, is slightly higher than the men participants, and of course currently married or higher in the sample. And if you see the rural-urban distribution, the sample from the rural is much higher. That means almost 70% 75% of people live in elderly people live in rural areas. And if you see the caste distribution, of course, like OBC and other caste is higher than the SC or ST caste categories. And in terms of religion of the sample characteristics, the majority of the sample characteristics like Hindus. That is like, of course, in India, the like religious, like the people following the Hindu religion is higher. And if you see the school, this education distribution, like the people with elderly people with 0 to 4 years, that is much higher. That means like, so elderly or like overall in India is like less educated. And we also the wealth quintile. This variable is based on the household wealth variables. This has a distribution of 20% for each indicator, and that means like the overall it shows that higher proportion in the poorest category, and around 33% people use tobacco in the study population. Yeah, if like we tested how this prevalence of edentism is increasing with age, or how this state level variations in the prevalence. So of course, age is a very strong factor, like from 7% among 60 to 69 age group to 80 or 26% for the 80 plus population. Like that is, age is closely associated with edentism. And if you see the prevalence of edentism, complete edentism across states of India, it is very important to note that there is a huge heterogeneity in the prevalence. The Punjab has the highest prevalence, that is 31%, and lowest is in Odisha. And this is very important for the policymakers or to understand about the issue of oral health. If you see the overall prevalence is 12%, but if you see the Punjab, it's highest. So that means like there is a huge heterogeneity across the state. So it is important to how the policies or how the state level intervention is. This helps to for the better policy. Next slide. Okay, and we used like previous literature shows education is one of the important factor in determining the tooth loss. But our study also shows that with higher education, the prevalence is much lower, like 13% among older adults with 0 to 4 years of education, and almost 4% lower among those who have 10 plus years of schooling. That makes like clear that education has a strong association with the oral health in India. And like this is a like regression result. So we used state as one of the variable. So here we show how comparing with Kerala, so how other states, like the odds ratio, how is affecting in other states. So if you see the comparing with Kerala, so the odds ratio for Punjab is higher. That means almost 5 times higher. And Himachal Pradesh also is higher than the Kerala, but similarly West Bengal. But if you see the odds ratio for Odisha and Tamil Nadu is much lower. Like when comparing with Kerala, so the prevalence is much lower in the states of Tamil Nadu and or Odisha. Of course, age is very strongly. I told you the earlier. So those who are in the 80 plus age group are almost 4 times more likely to be edentulous. And in this study, gender don't have much effect. And if you see the in terms of religion, comparing with Hindu, Muslim religion have a slightly lower risk of edentism, and other religious categories slightly having the higher risk of edentism. Similarly, the caste group also, those who comparing with the SC/ST categories, those who are in the others categories, or like this means general category or slightly higher risk of edentism. If you see the region wise or like for example rural urban differences, it is interesting that urban people have urban elderly have a lower risk of edentism. And in terms of education is significantly linked with edentism in the regression also. That is, those who have 10 plus years of schooling are almost 30% lower likely to report edentism. However, in the wealth quintile is not showing any association in this study. Okay, so we are in this slide. Here we are showing that how this the prevalence of like the 4 outcomes, for example, poor self-mental health, psychological distress, chewing disability, or subjective well-being. How these factors according to the edentalism variable. So if you see across across all indicators, those who report the edentulous people have more likely to have a poor self-mental health, and they are also having higher prevalence of psychological distress, and the prevalence of chewing disability is much higher among those who don't have teeth. Similarly, the lower subjective well-being is higher among those who don't have teeth. So that makes sense that those who have don't have any teeth having poor health and psychological well-being. So here this is a odds ratio present in the figure that shows that those who don't have teeth are almost 15 times more likely to report chewing disability, and they are more likely to report poor self-mental health, and they are almost 2 times more likely to report psychological distress, and they are more likely to report low subjective well-being. So across all indicators, those who don't have teeth are more likely to have poor health outcomes. Especially this chewing disabilities, the association is very close. That this is very important because it may have a lot of implication on the diet and overall nutritional status, and even the other health indicator, for example, poor self-rate also is one of the important marker of general health, and this edentalism is strongly associated with poor self-rate health. So in this aspect, so the oral health, the implication of oral health is strongly evident in this study. Next. So here is another important aspect of the result is that whether they are received any treatment for the oral health or edentalism problem. But like the reasons for not receiving this treatment is financial reason is one of the main reason, or they and almost 22% people said that they are not considering it as a serious health issue. So I think it is very important because even though the edentalism is very strongly linked with other health outcomes, but they are not taking it into consideration. So this is indicating the lack of awareness about the oral health status, and of course the oral health has a significant implications on mortality and other health outcomes. So in this perspective, so it is important to know that the healthcare workers or the policymakers to understand to create awareness about the oral health issues. Next. So we also tested how this distribute oral healthcare utilization. So duration of for example, almost more than 50% of people who are suffering this complete oral health problem is more than 5 years, and and only almost 18% of people have reported that they have taken some form of treatment in the last 3 months, and most of them reported that they took the treatment from the private or the clinic. Next. Okay, Ravinda, you can.
For me?
Yeah. So you can continue that.
Yeah. So as Salva showed, really strong inequalities in oral health and edentalism in India. We think that this study presents important findings for public policy in India. While the overall prevalence of edentalism is 12.4, we saw really huge regional differences. And we also saw, very surprisingly, lower prevalence of edentalism compared to previous studies. So we think it could be because of the sampling strategy, the selection of states that are older states. But again, that doesn't make any sense, because if we take in our sample states that have higher proportion of older people, we would expect that they would have a higher proportion of edentalousness. But then looking at the states that have the higher proportion of older people, majority of them are kind of states with the good other kind of health outcomes as well. So if we look into some of the states like Tamil Nadu, there are also, lots of healthcare policies that are catered to it. So maybe better healthcare in South Indian states might have resulted in also this kind of, lower edentism. But the other thing we also think is a selection bias, because 60 is the cutoff point. So we are looking at people with edentism who make to the age of 60 and above. So given that people with the edentism issues, as we know from previous studies, might have lower life expectancy and might have other health issues. So maybe some of them did not even make into our study, because what happens is there is a selection bias. So the impact directly into our cohort that's there, and that mortality bias is also impacting our edentism prevalence as well. We also think, for example, why Punjab has a higher prevalence of edentism compared to others. We believe that, for example, rice-eating states, you have seen that Tamil Nadu and Orissa, kind of mostly rice-eating states, might have lower reporting of edentism. For example, people might be facing edentism, but then if you are in a rice chewing kind of culture, you can continue eating because it's not really hard compared to eating a paratha or a hard kind of chicken. So it depends on the diet as well. So I think we need to look into complex aspects like diet. This is where Selva and I thought that without understanding the dietary intake and what's the usual diet in those settings, we can't understand the self-reporting bias as well. And also age and years of schooling was associated with edentism as suggested by the literature. So again, awareness is an important aspect, and age was found to be significant predictor like other studies as well. To our, again, surprise, wealth quintile did not show any significant association. We thought there would be some form of association between wealth and edentism. Again, this could be because of survivor bias in lower socioeconomic group. So those who have edentism in low SES might have had lower life expectancy and did not make to the study. So those who are present in the low SES group 60 plus might be the healthy group within that. So that could have killed the kind of, inequality showing, because we have lost lots of people before reaching that age and the survey. And also, because it's a self-reported one, lack of knowledge of edentism or acceptance of edentism as a part of aging might have contributed to some of these things. For example, you might be aware of some of the studies on hypertension in India, where when we ask people, do you have hypertension, very often the initial studies showed that hypertension was a problem of rich people and upper middle class. But then the problem was it was lack of awareness. Once there were objective studies that started measuring people's blood pressure, we saw that there was definitely an association there. But until then, it looked like it's only the richer people who had diabetes and also hypertension. It's just because people were not aware of it, or they did not measure it, or they didn't consider it as a serious problem that impacts directly the prevalence. And then we showed that the association of edentism with psychological distress, poor self-reported health was significant. So we stress that it's really important for policymakers to consider this and strengthen policies and continue making a big push within state policies and national policies to include oral health in one of the screening. I think we have to also reflect a little bit on the current COVID environment and the impact it has on the current statistics. We already see that the use of healthcare facilities is really poor at the moment for oral health, and those who use go to private settings. But then we know that in several settings, hospitals were closed, including dental hospitals. And also we have several challenges, including finishing the training due to lockdown. For example, many universities in the UK could not continue doing the dental kind of assessments and training because you need to have close proximity with some of the kind of tests. So they're on hold as well. So the number of dentists that would be available because of training, and also the number of people, especially older people with quarantine mode and also being very careful, might be less reluctant to go and check their oral health issues, check for their oral health issues, so which would increase and worsen the inequalities as well. So COVID brings in more complexity and added layer of really big challenge for older people, because it's not only directly impacting and increasing the risk of COVID mortality among older people, the utilization of healthcare facilities, including dental health services, would be playing a major role. So we have to wait and see and collect data as we go. So we need to collect data and make a big push that there needs to be more studies national level in India to understand these inequalities in edentalism and other oral health conditions. Selva, do you want to add anything? Otherwise, we are ready to take questions.
Yeah, I think we can take questions. If
May I have one question, Dr. Arvinda?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Dr. Arvinda, this is Srinivas from Sibar Institute of Dental Sciences.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Srinivas from Sibar Institute of Dental Sciences, Guntur.
Yeah, I recognize you, yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's nice to hear from you on edentalism. And we do conduct actually in India studies, but then they don't see the light, because it is done usually for the purpose of doing for the sake of master's degree. So such studies are being done in almost all the institutions, but they don't see the light because they don't get published in international journals. And one more point is census. I think India is due for census in 2021. Every 10 years here they take census. So it happened in 2011. I think it is due for 2021.
Yeah.
So that's the point. And some points, I mean, self-rated oral health. Yeah, what you said is very valid point. Like, because people eating rice may not appreciate. Inability to chew, as compared to people who eat bread. So that's a valid point and take away message. And it is mostly like a qualitative study, I guess. Is it not?
Oh, it's a quantitative study. So yeah.
Yeah, but
no, you need to carry on. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, asking questions and trying to get responses from them. And so did you find any difficulties in eliciting the answer from them? Is there any way? I mean, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, we didn't collect the study. We are Selva is part of the team, but we haven't collected the study ourselves.
Yeah, but whoever is the interviewer, did they found any difficulty in getting the answers?
I don't think this was one of the issues, because there were lots and lots of questions asked on health-related challenges. So they were very happily answering, because as you can see, if people reject it early on, the sampling strategy is such that if someone declines, then they go straight away to the next similar kind of household. The sampling strategy looks into that complexity as well. So
Okay. So that's an interesting point to note on Jharkhand. Also heard from you that they have a policy towards oral health in spite of being a poor state, and people are using. So any idea, like, what services they're using? They're using for just for extraction purpose or removal of tooth?
For everything.
For everything.
For removal of tooth, for dentures, for regular checkups. I think the claim is similar to 50,000 rupees. If I remember correctly, the claim is similar. They don't distinguish between oral health. So, and then you can see if you type Jharkhand and PMJY or Arogya Abhiyan or something like that, what you see is lots of hospitals coming and saying that, if you are, if you have this kind of, insurance, please come. Pradhan Mantri Yojana is eligible for the state level insurance. So I think there was a push also in Bangalore, in Karnataka a few months ago to have state policies to
Yes,
those
Karnataka has a state policy, but I'm not sure whether it is continued or not. Karnataka is actually the first. Karnataka is the first state to have a policy, and they even the colleges are being asked to give free denture delivery, and then colleges are substituted with money from the government. So I'm not sure about private colleges are into this program or not, but government colleges are into this program in Karnataka.
And coming to your point about publications, I think this is an important thing. Madan also asked me to focus a little bit on in terms of what opportunities are there and stuff. I think the point is when we want to publish.
One point I'll just get you, because whenever we send to these international journals, what the response we get is the common point. This is of not interest to our readers. This area is of not interest to our readers. So please kindly publish it in your area journals or something. That's the point they usually mention us.
Yeah. I think there are two issues here. One is that a master student and the study, coming to international publications, they expect, you can see with this kind of data, we struggle to go to different journals because the data was considered old, and we lost steam also with this whole process, because when we go to international publishers, they are used to regular data. So you said that census 2021 data is being collected. So you're very happy that we have data only once in 10 years. We shouldn't be happy. This is where I'm saying we are very happy and expecting that once in 10-year data is absolutely fine.
But India, I mean, population-wise, India is a very big, enormous, no? So it is very expensive to collect also. So there
are other ways of, collecting data. For example, the oral health study, that the national level study, we know, they don't happen very often, and there are really very few kind of studies that can be in the publishable level. Even the data that's available, we don't have the detailed kind of, it's really, really complex in terms of understanding. I review lots of papers. So if you ask me why some of the papers were not published by master students, some of our master students also look into, some big data and other things. So a journal looks into what is the big problem, what kind of big data you're bringing. So if you're doing not a really sampling in the way they expect, or the questions that are unique, and if it is repetitive, it's really hard to publish, which is why it's really important to have big surveys that are complex, and they can really look into the international literature style, where you have lots of information.
I think the language is given more importance actually than the content.
And also the data itself.
The language is
and
given
the data
more,
itself.
That's what. Very interesting to hear. And then thank you so much for connecting prosthodontist with the public health dentist. I think my students my colleagues are there in this group from Sibar Institute of Dental Sciences, from public health dentistry department. Probably, I think, I'm not sure, but directly prosthodontics may not invite us a public health dentist for their seminars, but this is a unique opportunity where prosthodontists and public health dentists have a common point to come across. Thank you so much, Dr. Arvinda and Selva.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Arvinda, there are some few questions in the chat box actually. Dr. Raj has asked you, is there any role of systematic diseases in relation to edentalism considered in this present study?
Yeah, we didn't look into any other diseases other than, we didn't look into disease per se, we just looked into the subjective health and, the chewing disability, the psychological distress. So only those variables we presented, we looked into. Because again, we can't look into, Selva and I discussed it, Selva will say a little bit more. We wanted to do so many things once we identified the gap. But then the data this is one of the problems. While we have some of the data, which is really good compared to what is not there, but then we still have so many gaps. So we needed to look at, diet, style, or BMI, or various other aspects, and we don't have such data available. So some of the data sets that had all that did not collect any questions on edentalism. And some of the data that have edentalism did not really look into some of the disease factors. So the aging surveys are also not joined in the way. So this is also within gerontology studies, edentalism is not given importance, and that's what we are seeing in our studies. Selva, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, we also wanted to see how these other diseases are linked with edentalism. But the problem with the data, because we want to see mostly the BMI or other chronic diseases. But most of the diseases are self-reported, and we don't have data of BMI or other indicators. So our main aim is to check what are the correlates and how this edentalism is affecting the general and mental health outcomes. So that's the major aim of this study. So we didn't look at the diseases, because if you look at the diseases, it will be kind of diverting the scope or the focus. That's what we didn't look at that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Selva. There's another question from Dr. Bhuwana. He just asked that what the direction that edentulism and psychological distress associated?
I think it's very complex, as you know, it's not a one-to-one kind of thing. So, for example, older people who have edentulism might also find it really hard with chewing and other, dietary intake, which could also impact the psychological distress. So it's really not one-to-one association, but literature showed that there is an association directly where edentulism could result in stress in a way. But then if you look at how it is measured, you can see that not every measure within those, not every question could be directly related to edentulism. So psychological distress is a really complex variable, so which could be directly associated and also indirectly associated through the impact of edentulism. Selva?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is a when they lose the teeth, so it actually affects the overall diet and the confidence, because their interaction with the other members. So it's so they have a kind of low self-esteem, or their interaction will get lower. So it may be one of the factor affecting the how their psychological how it is influencing the psychological well-being of the elderly person.
And we have observed among our families or during field work in the past as well, when people start losing their teeth, they suddenly feel like they don't want to go to restaurants, they don't want to eat, chapati or hard stuff when they go out, even though previously that was their favorite food when they went out to eat or when they had takeaways. So you see, when we observe very closely, because part of me is always an anthropologist observing when I go out, going to different, field work settings, rural settings, slum settings in India, and you observe, you talk, you hear these discussions in the background, he doesn't go out anymore, he doesn't eat because he feels shy to show his teeth, or sometimes families saying, don't come out because you look like, your mouth is empty, so I don't want you to carry you to a party or wedding. So there are so many complex associations that could also make impact of edentulism on psychological distress directly and indirectly.
Okay. There's another question from Dr. Sarita. How did you approach the elderly patients?
These are not patients, these are home dwelling people.
Home dwelling patients. Okay.
Yeah. Selva, you want to say something about
actually,
because Selva works on some of the surveys as well. Sorry.
No, actually, this is a nationally representative survey collected by the one of the organization in Bangalore. So they have a sampling framing, etc. It's not we haven't collected. So that's actually a UNFPA's project to collect the data on the health and well-being of the elderly population. So we haven't approached any of the things. We just took the data from the ISAC Bangalore and did some analysis on that.
Thank you, sir.
And these are home dwelling people. This is what one of the things we said in the literature, that hospital-based studies show a different kind of association because of bias. So these are not care home dwelling, these are not hospital setting, these are not patients, these are older people living in their home settings, either living on their own or living with their spouse or living with their family extended. And they were asked a variety of questions on living arrangements. How do they feel about their life? Do they feel like they live in their house or they live in some, their children's house? Who pays for their bills? So it was a large, comprehensive evidence-building survey for aging in India. And one of the questions included was edentulism and also chewing disability. And even though it was there, it was, again, as I said, in most of the aging surveys, edentulism is not an important aspect. It's not really covered. So there were a couple of questions, but not exactly the way we wanted to check. But then we use that because it's an opportunity to understand and show the gaps in India so that more future surveys will compile additional evidence that would help policymakers.
There is another question. If you have time, and then can we have...
Sure.
So here, edentulous person is completely or somewhat different from the persons who have dentures. How this can be attributed or how it can be overcome for the outcome of edentulism? You can see the...
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry, Selva, you were saying something?
How we can overcome the problem of the edentulism. That's what the Nyana Sarita has asked. So we can maybe because in India people don't take it as a serious issue, but if the government is providing more awareness or use of dentures or any other alternative for the better this one teeth, or that can be come. Like, I think use of denture may be one aspect that we can overcome from the edentalism. Aravinda, you can add some more points on that.
I think it's a really tricky thing. As I said, edentalism is asked as, has ever somebody, health professional, told you didn't have teeth or you lost your teeth? So, for example, if they had dentures to fix it, they might also still say, because somebody said in the past that they had edentalism. So often what you see is dentures, but again, you know that there are different types of dentures within those semi-permanent and permanent one that people remove and fix it. We don't have any of the complex data, but the only question perhaps they could have asked a little bit more was, do you have dentures? You know, they only asked what kind of, have you attended a doctor because of your oral health issues? So we don't have the detailed complex analysis. But then from the studies in the UK or in Germany, what we have is those additional questions related to, you know, do you have dentures? When did you take it? What kind of dentures you have? Did it impact your dietary intake? All those different aspects were asked so that we can exactly know what was done following edentalism.
Okay. Yeah, is there any questions from the audience? You can ask them. I think that there is no questions for the more, I think so.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a comprehensive compilation of the data. And we have got a lot of research questions also from yours, Sherry. And I think many people would have been found it helpful. I now request Dr. Anand Kumar sir, Professor, Department of Prosthodontics, to present certificate to Anand Meera.
There's another question, Aravinda. That's another question from Rekha Gupta. Can I ask you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Do we have any data about correlation between oral habits and edentalism?
Again, unfortunately, no data. Yeah, even I'm just looking and thinking about the data that we have in England, ELSA, or other kind of data sets. I don't think we have that information about correlation between oral habits and edentalism. The only thing we have is chewing of tobacco, smoking cigarettes is the maximum oral habits that gets collected. In the National Family Health Survey for India, there were questions on oral screening in addition to cervical screening and breast screening, but even then they only asked, have you had oral screening? That's it. So, but they don't have any questions on edentalism. So where you have any questions on oral habits like chewing of, pan, tobacco, but they don't ask other questions about brushing or other things, but what you have is other kind of risk factors, chewing tobacco, pan, regular consumption of, something that could be, harmful for teeth. But then those studies never focus on edentalism. Those studies that have edentalism never ask questions on oral habits.
Yeah. Aravinda, I think we have some more questions on maybe on funding for the project. There is any information on funding for doing researches?
There are lots of funding opportunities, but again, within oral health and inequalities, I would not know specifically any calls related to dental health. But then there are lots of calls related to within India, you will have lots of calls related to, health inequalities or any kind of data collection exercise, especially now with COVID. Okay. So you should be able to get some of those kind of, opportunities. In addition to that, what we have in the UK is Global Challenges Research Fund. So we look into some of the big challenges that are happening globally, and then it's a highly competitive grant. But what we are asked to do is make a case on how any kind of study would fill the gap. If any partnership, if you're thinking of partnership with the university, for example, let's say Aberdeen, we have to put a big proposal, and that proposal has to build on strengths from both groups, and it has to be, focusing on data collection exercise, something that hasn't been done, which is very unique, and it goes to multiple reviewers, and scoring comes all UK level. Very few projects get funded. So there are different opportunities like that. For those of students considering PhD opportunities, there's Commonwealth funding, and at times also there are visiting fellowships available. For example, they're visiting funding from Indian government, selecting particular students to go 1 year to different institutes abroad for training. So Aberdeen University is open for those kind of things. And just to give a little bit of information about the school I come from, Aberdeen school I work is School of Medicine, Medical Sciences and Nutrition. So we have 5 institutes within those. One of the institute I work is Institute of Applied Health Sciences. So we look into applied health, health inequalities, health economics, health services research unit, epidemiology. So we are really complex group of people working on multiple topics that could enable improvement in health in different populations, including Asian, African settings as well. So we have some projects in India and Africa as well, but majority of our work is within the UK. The other institute we have is the Institute of Medical Sciences. Again, colleagues work mostly on lab-based work there. But the Institute of Dental Science is another big institute within our group. And we are number 1 in the UK for dental science. So a lot of research happens in terms of, various aspects and PhD programs and course supervisions. There are also different PhD co-applications. Sometimes Liverhome Trust or Wellcome Trust will invite people for PhD submissions between different countries as well. So there are opportunities, but then again, it has to be based on, these are highly competitive. So, and a lot of energy and time is consumed in those grants. So I think if anyone is thinking of that, you have to really have a body of work, have a plan, think about, what could be done, explore opportunities of, first small grant application to understand what gaps are there, what could be done, and then move to the next level of, how the gaps could be addressed.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation, and then we had so many informations from you. Maybe we will take a lot of information, and then thank you first of all for accepting our invitation, and then sharing your knowledge on this edentulation particularly. Thank you so much. And then Dr. Fatima, can you Dr. Selva, thank you so much, Selva.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah,
thank you so much.
I think this paper wouldn't have been possible without Selva. So it's Selva's kind of, he is always looking into what gaps are there among older people. So I think, Selva is the driving force of this paper. Whereas I'm interested in inequalities. He was like, we don't have edentulism. We need to look into it. And he was like pushing this all the time. So it's Selva's brainchild.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ramesh, there was one small question. They were asking about duration of the project work.
Yeah.
One of my student is asking duration of project work.
It depends on the type of project you're looking into. For example,
this project.
Oh yeah. Okay, this is 1 year. So it took 1 year to collect data, if I remember correctly. Selva, is it correct? The data collection was an exhaustive exercise.
Yeah, it was like in 2011 and 12, like almost 1 year, like this survey. Yeah, from that time.
Thank you.
Dr. Fatima?
Yes, sir. Can I ask Dr. Ankumar, sir, to come online? Hello?
I'm online, Dr. Fatima. Thank you so much.
Sir, I request you to present certificate to Dr. Arvinda Meera.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Arvinda and Mr. Selva. It was a wonderful, actually, online meet with a lot of demographic details, and you opened eyes to many people who can actually progress into some type of study if they pick up valid point from your presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely presentation again. I now present this e-certificate to Dr. Arvinda Meera, Guntupalli, for a wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I now request Dr. Karthigeyan, sir, Associate Professor, Department of Prosthodontics, to present certificate to Dr. Selvam, Mr. Selvam.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you both for your presentation. Our HOD, Dr. Kasim sir, is there, sir? Can you please enlighten?
Thank you so much, Dr. Selva and Dr. Arvinda. It's very wonderful, this thing. I think it's entirely different. Usually we should have a maximum we have, only the presentation is restricted to only our department issues. Now it's like more of, as Dr. Srinivas said, almost a combination of community dentistry and prosthodontics like that. So I think it is entirely a different experience for us and for students also. I think that's more of this kind of epidemiological studies that we should do it more. It's definitely useful for our populations, especially in Indian populations. Definitely it's eye opener. Both I think you are all eye opener for us that we have to. You are encouraging us to do this kind of the studies. Maybe I hope that other postgraduate students also will take up this kind of the studies and do it in their careers. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aravinda and Selva, for accepting us. And
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving an opportunity. Yeah.
thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. It's also good to hear, your thoughts and your questions as well, because as I said, we are looking into aging issues, gerontological issues, and inequalities. We are not dentists, or we don't have any dentistry related training. So it's good to engage with all of you to get questions related to your thoughts as well. So
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to have you on.
thank you.
I request Dr. Parthasarathy, Associate Professor, to give the vote of thanks.
Warm good evening to everyone. On the behalf of HOD and organizing team, I'd like to thank our respected Chancellor, Mr. V.R. Venkatachalam sir, our Pro-Chancellor, Mr. R.V. Sengatuvan sir, our Vice Chancellor, Dr. P.V. Vijayaraghavan sir, Professor of Eminence and Chief Advisor, Administration, Dr. T.K. Parthasarathy sir, Dean Research and Professor of Eminence, Dr. S.P. Tyagarajan sir, Professor of Eminence and Advisor, Academics, Dr. Somasundram sir, Dean of Faculties, Dr. Makesh Bakamri sir, our respected Dean of Sri Ramachandra Faculty of Dental Sciences, Professor Dr. C. Ravindran sir, our Vice Principal, Dr. Sada Siva Subramaniam sir, for giving us tremendous support and opportunity to conduct this webinar. I'd like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Arvinda Meera and Mr. Selva Mani for their efforts to enlighten us with their wonderful speech in prevalence, correlates, and health-related implications in journalism among elderly in India. I would like to also thank faculties, undergraduate and postgraduate students, and clinicians from various institutions and across all over the country who have taken their time out from their busiest schedule to grace this occasion. Lastly, I'd like to thank our faculties, postgraduate of my department, for their valuable inputs and contributions in making this event a great success. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Aravinda. Aravinda and Selva, it's a pleasure to have you online. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good day.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Bye.
I request the participants to fill the feedback form to receive your certificates.
Thank you both.
Yeah. So we are leaving the call. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
I will send the certificate.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good day.